Are we ready to embrace Windows 11?
What does Microsoft's XCloud mean for gaming in Australia?
Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support.
Hi there. Welcome back once again to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News. Each week, we sneak across the state borders, while they still exist, to catch up with Australia's leading tech journalists and dive into the big stories of the week. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm joined as usual by Adam Turner. Now, Adam, Facebook and its associated services were offline for quite some time this week, although they are back now. If you'd had the chance to duck into Facebook HQ and make one change to Facebook for the better while they were offline, what would it have been?
I think it'd have to be to turn on their experimental crazy uncle filter. They must have a crazy uncle filter because no one at Facebook would be able to use it without it. You've all got that crazy, or maybe use your brother-in-law, whatever the anti-vaxxer conspiracy nut drives you crazy, and there should just be a button that goes, "Nah, go away." I want to see that because if they want people to pay for Facebook, there's your business model right there.
But that's like 97% of the Facebook traffic,
True,
isn't
there
it?
wouldn't be much left, but what's left would be gold.
That's quite possibly true. We're also joined in the studio by ZDNet's Chris Duckett. Chris, what Facebook hack would you have dropped in?
It's called kerosene, and it's very flammable.
Only because you couldn't get your hands on some napalm.
Well, yeah, it was the first thing that came to mind that I think, what can I burn?
Look, kerosene's nicely affordable, I think.
True.
So that works well enough. Well, while we might be able to afford kerosene, this week also sees the free release of Windows 11. Yes, that's right. Redmond has unleashed the beast on the world, but should we be terrified or happy to invite it into our homes? We're going to be chatting all things Windows 11 with Chris shortly. But first, I caught up with Alice Clarke earlier in the week to talk gaming. So it's a big week in gaming, and I'm joined in the virtual Vertical Hold studios by Alice Clarke from The Age, the SMH, Byteside, a bunch of other places. Alice is all over the internet, and indeed all over gaming. It's PAX week, and we're going to get to that in a second. But prior to PAX, Microsoft formally launched what used to be called XCloud, what's now called Xbox Cloud Gaming in Australia. Alice, what is Xbox Cloud Gaming in a nutshell?
It is a magical way for you to be able to play Xbox games on any device, whether or not it has the power to actually play games. It's kind of nuts.
This sounds like witchcraft because isn't the point of kind of like having an Xbox Series X that it's insanely powerful and my tablet and phone is?
Yeah, so they being Microsoft, have built a bunch of Xbox Series X blades into some data centers around the world. And so instead of firing up a game on your own Xbox, you can fire up a game on their Xbox and have it streamed to your phone.
I've seen it described sort of as like a Netflix for games. This idea that you're going to stream the game because this is not just streaming someone else watching a game. This is literally the game is playing on their Xbox Blade, and your inputs are driving or shooting or doing whatever it is the game wants you to do.
Yeah, pretty much. So it leverages Xbox Game Pass, which is already a pretty epic subscription service for only about $16 a month. That gives you access to more than 100 games and multiplayer. And you can normally just play those games on your Xbox or your PC. But now those games available everywhere. As long as you have a good internet connection of at least 10 megabits per second.
Yeah, the good internet connection is really, really vital. I've been playing around with it over the last week since they sent it fully live. It's been in beta for a couple of months, I think, here locally.
A couple of years,
Couple of
off and
years?
off.
Oh,
I played it a couple of years ago, and then it went away, and then it came back.
And when my net connection is good, it's pretty good. But when my net connection is suffering, the gameplay definitely suffers. Although usually more visually, one of the things that's really impressed me, usually more visually than with input controls. Like what I'm doing on screen works, it just looks a little bit downgraded in that very Netflixy kind of way.
Yeah, I really appreciate that they have prioritized gameplay over game looks, because when XCloud was first in beta, the lag was just unusable. And now it's become something that I can imagine myself using every time I take public transport, should that ever be an option to me again.
It'll happen one day, I'm sure.
I can dream.
One of the things that they've built in, although not to every single game, is touch controls. You don't necessarily need an Xbox controller for these games. But what I've found, at least, is there are some games for which touch control is not a problem, and there are some games for which I'm going, why did they actually put touch control in this game?
Yeah, sometimes just because you can doesn't mean you should. But there are some games that works really well. I have to admit, I've mostly just stuck to playing Forza Horizon 4, and that you do not use touch controls on. I've been using a little backbone controller that goes either side and works well on iPhone.
Well, I knew I would be chatting to you, so I did put some time in on Forza Horizon because I knew I'd be in trouble if I didn't. And yeah, I mean, that's a really good example of a game where I've seen a lot of visual degradation when my net
Mm.
connections got worse, but the car steers just fine, or just as fine as I can steer a Forza Horizon car, which is dangerously unsafe, I should say. Whereas trying to play, what was it, Yakuza Like a Dragon has touch controls. And
Oh,
it's yeah,
no.
it's nuts that it's running on a phone, but it's even more nuts that I'm trying to control it with a touch panel.
Yeah, I guess if you're really, really stuck, but you can't not play the game, but if you got to pack your controller, it could work in a pinch, but just pack a controller. Like, and it's what's amazing is how many controllers it works with. Like, you can use a PlayStation controller on an Xbox game. Not well, but you can.
You can if you must. One of the other things that surprised me with it, one of the other little benefits to it was, and I hadn't really considered this until I thought, oh yeah, I'll launch something. And Avengers came out last weekend for Game Pass. It's not a great game by
No.
any stretch of the imagination, but one of the things I'm aware of is it's a huge install if you wanted to actually install it on your Xbox.
Mm.
But one of the huge advantages with this is you've just got that time till the server runs up an instance for you. It's like a minute or so. You could not install that game in a minute on
No.
any net connection anywhere in the world.
And if you don't have any room on your phone, you don't even need to download the Game Pass app. In fact, if you have an iPhone, downloading the Game Pass app will get you nowhere. You can just do it through the website.
Yeah, it's this weird flexible thing of what is it? Android has a specific Game Pass app, but if you're doing it on PC, if you're doing it on iOS, as you say, it's browser. But you can also use the browser with Android as well. You
Yeah.
don't need anything specifically, except I would say that controller. Um, Getting back to this kind of Netflixy
Mm.
idea, though, Netflix obviously completely changed and basically wiped out your traditional video store, that kind of thing. Do you think that's where Microsoft is headed with this? And what does that mean for the future of owning that box you have under the TV, be it an Xbox, PlayStation, or whatever?
I think they've really cleverly made it so you can't actually play these games on, say, an Apple TV or natively on a TV. Like, there are definitely ways around that you can do it. So they haven't completely made it so you don't need an Xbox. But what they might be trying to do is kill off the PC master race, where you have to have this $5,000 gaming rig to play a game. Like, I can play Forza right now on a MacBook Air if I feel like it. Like,
I
that's
wouldn't
where
have
it's
I
going.
wouldn't have called the MacBook Air the PC Master Race, I guess.
Well, no,
But
that's what I'm saying.
hmm.
You could play it on a Chromebook.
But I would have thought as well for the PC Master Race types that they're so into their graphical fidelity. They're the ones who are buying the high-end graphics card because they
Hmm.
want 4K streaming. This is not 4K streaming yet.
Not yet, but that doesn't seem too far away. Like, that's where this is going. Microsoft's not making any money out of you buying an incredibly fancy PC. Like, you can do that if you want to, but they're not making a single dollar off it other than selling you your Windows license. If they can sell you that same Windows license on a cheaper computer, which means more people can buy it and more people can subscribe to Game Pass, then that's where the profit is for them.
Oh, totally. It's part of that whole look. They're becoming and have become a services company, and this just fits very nicely in with that.
I think Xbox is really getting that step over PlayStation and Nintendo on this one, and they're trying to make themselves the first step on your path to gaming. Because it's much, if Johnny wants to get an Xbox for Christmas, but you're not really sure if you want to spend the $750 on a Series X, but you are willing to pay $16 a month and give little Johnny your phone, suddenly that's going to choose which console you're in when you eventually do buy a console and make a lot more decisions from there.
It's a smart strategy. It did strike me, actually. It's really a very specific blow, or it feels like a specific blow against the Switch, because it gives the Xbox that portability without them having to develop a single portable console.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. Like, I have to admit, when Game Pass first launched, I was like, oh, that's a nice idea. Wonder who's going to do that. And now it's the number one selling point for anything Xbox. Like, it's the reason why it should be the main family console in every family. Or not even a console, just a service.
Indeed. Well, speaking of things that are awesome, or that should theoretically be awesome, it is also PAX week, but as it was last year, we don't get an in-person PAX. We don't get to pack a few thousand people into the Melbourne Convention Centre because it's all online. And I know you've been involved with PAX, the Together Lounge, I think it is.
Yes, PAX
You've done in the
Together
past.
is the new name for the Diversity Lounge, which is I'm still adjusting to.
So tell me about the Diversity Lounge. Tell me about PAX Together. What is it?
It is my favorite place in the world. It is essentially, it has been described as gay mini PAX, even though it's not just gay, or is it a mini PAX? But it's essentially a room upstairs where we have playable games with plenty of consoles and PCs featuring both indie and AAA titles, a full board game library, a full panel schedule, tournaments with prizes, talks from on how to use adaptive controllers and how to make safe spaces, as well as community groups who have booths and can tell you about the good work they're trying to do to make gaming a little bit better. The Diversity Lounge is the place you go if you haven't been made to feel entirely welcome in the mainstream gaming community. This is the place where you find your people.
That sounds excellent. How does that work, though, virtually? Because we are talking about a virtual PAX.
Virtually, it is quite a challenge. I can't have half those things. What I do have is there are a couple of featured games that we're going to have as part of PAX that you can go and check out and play the demos of. I have there are a selection of panels, including one with the amazing Katie Jo Wright, who is the head of Gaming for Everyone at Microsoft, and talking about that initiative. There's, of course, Nerd Quiz, the trivia game about pop culture and games with a diversity twist and features my favorite round of all time, Dead, Evil, Pregnant, match the same-sex attracted female character with the trope she ended up in. And then we also have this Discord where I've tried to recreate the lounge in having networking events and meetup events every day scheduled in. And you can find all of that on the PAX website.
Awesome. And I believe, unless I've misread the schedule, forgive me if I have, you're doing at least one panel yourself, or possibly more?
3 panels.
3 panels. I was wrong. I was wrong. Tell me about your 3 panels.
Okay, so I'm actually interviewing Katie Jo Wright about Gaming for Everyone. So that's one. I am the host of Nerd Quiz along with Donald Duong, and I'm also hosting What Kind of Year Has It Been with Jess Zammett, which is a panel that we do every year looking back at the last 12 months of queer female representation in media. And I have to admit, most years, the kind of year it's been has been bad. But this past year has been pretty great. At what cost? But pretty great. So definitely one to tune into.
Sounds excellent. Anything else, given PAX is running a lot of panels and people should definitely go check the schedule, work out which things they can make the time for and that suit their particular interests. Anything else on the PAX schedule that's particularly grabbed your attention?
Okay, so aside from the panels I've already mentioned, a couple of other can't miss ones on Saturday at 1:30 p.m. There's Decolonizing Gaming Spaces, which is a really interesting panel featuring Indigenous experts talking about their experiences and journeys to decolonizing game spaces. Uh, Also at 1:30 on Saturday, so you're going to need to schedule it or catch up later. There's a panel about how Australia's gaming classification system works. And if you've ever wondered why a game gets refused classification, this will tell you why. There's going to be a really cool fireside chat with Deathloop's Dinga Bakaba. Bakaba? Sorry, I've only ever seen that name written down. I'm really sorry if I've gotten it wrong. There's Indigenous narratives in storytelling on Sunday, which is about Maori storytelling. And there's just so much. I actually wrote an article for Kotaku outlining some of the best panels to go see at PAX, so you should definitely check that out. But just have a look at the schedule. There's so much to be inspired by.
It's absolutely true. I mean, I was digging through it, and I think this is Sunday, but I could be totally wrong, and I don't have the schedule in front of me. There's a panel on using Dungeons and Dragons as a teaching tool in schools, which just it tickles my own personal educational and D&D nerd bones in just the right way. And I that schedule feels like that. It's that thing of look long enough, you will find things that speak to you as a person, no matter what person you happen to be.
Yeah, there really genuinely is something for everybody on there. And I know everybody always says that, but there's just so many panels. If you like games, there is at least one there for you, unless you're into Forza, in which case there is not yet one for me. But there will be one day.
Look, I think what you need to do is obviously get ready to prep for PAX next year and start pitching that Forza panel right now.
Oh, I have pitched it every year to Playground Games, and one day I will win.
I look forward to that day. Thanks so much for your time, Alice.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to seeing everyone at PAX.
So, Chris, Alex answered my first question in the intro, how much they want for Windows 11. It's free. All right, so we've got over that barrier. Apart from that, why should anyone be excited about Windows 11?
I honestly don't think they should be.
Okay, and thanks for joining
yeah,
us
no,
at next week's show.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. But
Yeah.
the thing is like under the hood, this is still Windows 10. Now, if you go back to the release of Windows 10, remember that was like going to be the last Windows they ever released. And they
Yeah.
were just going to keep doing feature updates and feature packs for it. Windows 11 is just a really big feature pack with a number. And what it does do is it basically draws a line between all the releases before 11 and after 11. And the reason for that is because they're not allowing Windows 11 onto devices that don't have TPM modules. So think like secure enclaves for your phone, that sort of thing. Basically, what 11 allows them to do is to sort of, from the time the machine boots up until you use it, you've got this secure pipeline the whole way. And that's really what this is all about. It's not about terribly much functionality. Sure, they've gone and changed the settings again. They've moved the start bar. Why? Don't know why.
Because they could.
Because they could. They're trying again with widgets. We went through this in Vista.
Yeah.
Like everything old is new again. But what it does do is basically it just draws this line where Microsoft can go, everything that's on 11 has an extra, basically it builds on a foundation of security that they can do other things with later on. That they know that the biometrics will be stored in the TPM and that sort of thing. They can go around encrypting stuff willy-nilly. That's really what this is all about. And I think in the end, it might make the progress and the rollout of some Android updates look fast-paced because there's basically what Microsoft is going to be counting on is all the existing Windows 10 machines basically get old and get cycled out and then they get replaced with Windows 11. They're not really pushing this. This isn't like there's no Stones doing Start Me Up, right, at midnight. Okay? They basically just want to get you onto 11 and then once you're on 11, you're in the future. And
Well,
for
that
the next
doesn't.
I wanted to talk around this rollout strategy thing because it's weird. They've done half of what they did with Windows 10, where they said, "Oh, look, not everyone's getting it straight away. You will be eligible, and we'll tell you when you can download it through Windows Update," which is sort of what they did with Windows 10. They don't seem to be doing the pestering yet, which is nice. But then this week they launched it a day early, and they made it.
no, there was not a day early. People couldn't time zone. I was like, but what that was Americans not realizing that New Zealand is only like 4 hours behind them, which actually meant 20 hours in front.
So you're saying they actually respected the international dateline then?
Yep,
Wow,
absolutely.
that's damn. I mean, that's nearly a first.
That's your big news.
Yeah.
Seppos are continuing to Seppo and don't realize that time zones wrap around the world. No, they released it on time. It was after midnight on October 5 NZ.
Okay, but they also made it ridiculously easy to upgrade if you wanted to. I mean, if
Yes.
you actually want to go through the process, and I have done this with one of my machines because I do need to have some presence there and some knowledge of the platform. And I was kind of expecting, oh God, I might have to pester or with Windows 10, you had to kind of sort of force your way in if you wanted it really early. But this was just a case of, yeah, look, download this. It runs the check to say, yes, you've got a TPM, what is it, 2PM 2.0, I think, module?
1.2 or something, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was just, right, download. About half an hour later, it was done. I was
Yep.
Windows 11ified. That was kind of surprising to me, just within that context of, yeah, we'll do slow upgrades. And I think you're totally right. I think the vast majority of people will hit Windows 11 for the first time when they buy a new machine, probably what, say 3 months from now to cycle out the old stock?
Yeah, 3 months or 3 years. I think Microsoft really seems to be working on sort of like a 5-year window almost for this thing, basically. Because if you bought something last year, there were configurations you could buy last year that won't run this. You can do the hacks and stuff, and they're like, look, if you really, really want this, we'll put it on there. You can go around the TPM checks. But I reckon in about 2023, 24, they'll forget that exists. Throw something in that depends on the TPM, and you'll have a whole bunch of nerds going, oh, my 11 broke. It's like, yeah, you put on a machine that doesn't have a TPM, mate. So, yeah, this is like the most low energy Windows release we've ever seen.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing. If this is just Windows 10 with a new hat from a consumer perspective, like I understand what you're saying on the bonnet about the security stuff, but if this, walks and talks like Windows 10, that's a good thing because Windows has always been, new versions of Windows has always been about breaking shit. They'd have a version of Windows that broke everything, and then the next version of Windows would settle everything down, which is why everybody thinks that XP was great and 7 was great and 10 was great, but they hated Vista and 8 and some of the others because they were the ones that broke stuff. So we were due for a Windows that broke stuff. So I think a lot of people are going to be pleased to hear that this is really not a
Yeah.
Windows that breaks stuff.
Yeah, it does break stuff, but it breaks it hardware side, not necessarily software side. It actually does have, for the fact they've like an actual sort of hard break in the timeline,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah. Yeah, like I say, when you look at it in a terminal, the Windows version starts with a 10. Doesn't start
Yeah,
with an 11.
that's a pretty big
Now
sign.
now they say this is for compatibility, and look, it
Yeah.
probably is. But I mean, you could have kept 10. You could have kept 10 as like 8 if you wanted to, really. But
Yeah.
so
But normally the problem would be it would break drivers and suddenly your printer wouldn't work and all your other stuff. All of that should work because any accessory, any device, any peripherals, the word I'm looking for, that works with Windows 10 should work with Windows
yeah,
11. Yes,
yeah, and Microsoft's got really good at this stuff. Like what they're doing now.
eventually.
Yeah, well, it took 20 how many decades?
Decades.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but like the sort of release they're doing now, they've done it like twice a year, really, when you get those feature updates for Windows 10.
yeah.
Like the difference between, your 20H1 and your 19H2 release, they kind of are almost like mini releases in themselves. And this one is just one that just has a shiny number on it.
Well, I mean, in terms of the interesting broken stuff, the one thing that I've seen emerge this week is the suggestion that some of AMD's processors don't like Windows 11 much. That people are seeing some big performance drops there. That feels very classic. Hey,
Yeah.
maybe wait a bit to update.
Yeah.
Yeah, did Wintel ever stop? I mean, you do, everything cycles around, right? Like we've got AMD back in the game, kicking butt. And once again, Windows just goes, "No, I'm made for Intel, damn it, get out of the way. What are you doing?" But yeah, I think that's actually one of the things about this is so low energy. Don't feel bad if you don't get on this on day one because it's a major release. Things are going to be a bit rough on the edges.
Well, that's always been my advice to people. Don't upgrade anything on the day one, whether it's your phone or your computer, whatever, because it's not your job to, bug test their stuff. It's not your job to break that. It's our job.
Yeah.
Let us take the hit. Let us help them figure out, oh, gee, we broke that thing. What did they used to say? Never upgrade until Service Pack 1?
Yeah,
Same sort of
yeah,
logic applies. When iOS comes out or Android, you don't put the brand new one on your phone day one because you need your phone to work.
yeah. Look, it's a different world being in Windows, in the 2020s, for instance. I've
Yeah.
got a machine out there. I think I was like 3 or 4 feature updates behind. I didn't even realize.
Yeah.
Like, the whole Windows had crapped itself, and that's another story. But the point was, is I was
Maybe
on.
there's a reason for that, Chris. I mean,
Yeah.
just quietly.
No, oh mate, I did 1,500 words on how to basically. Oh, it's an ARM-based machine as well. It's whack. And its recovery image was corrupted. And let's just say that there's a reason you can't go to Windows and download an image for an ARM machine, right?
Yeah,
Bad
yeah,
news.
I'm aware of this one, but yeah,
Yeah, but basically, like, that thing, for whatever reason, sat around on a 2019 version of Windows. I never knew until I went into the About one day and was like, I think I'm due for like an upgrade, or where's the next feature upgrade or something. Like, yeah, Microsoft's almost on a rolling release here, which is very, very good. You that, that's like the nirvana you want for your distro. If you can get it rolling and stable, that's wonderful.
Mm.
Because yeah, you shouldn't ever break stuff. So they've got really good at it. But yeah, I'd give them 6 months, I reckon, just to
So
polish it a bit.
you mentioned ARM, and that's always been a thing on the side. Is that, as you say, Windows was designed for Intel processors or X80, hang
six.
on, X86 processors, and then there was ARM, which is more like what you would find in a smartphone or another kind of device. And then they made these stripped down versions of Windows that worked on ARM where you couldn't run any apps, and it was this horrible thing. Why the hell would anybody want that? But I get the impression that with Windows 10 and moving forward with Windows 11, they're aiming more to have the Intel or Intel equivalent and the ARM versions to be a bit more equal, and you're not, sacrificing too much because you're using one or the other. Is that the way it's going?
Yeah, well, they've taken tablet mode out behind the shed and got the shotgun out on it, right?
Which was the mode that wouldn't run really any third party apps or anything because
Oh,
it
no,
wasn't
No,
real
that's
Windows.
that's S mode.
That's
Oh,
S
that's S
mode.
mode. Okay, sorry.
Otherwise known as suffer mode.
Has that also been taken out the back?
I imagine it would still be. Ooh, that's a good question. I imagine it would still be around somewhere.
Yeah.
Because that's the sort of stuff. There are certain programs, and certain. Yeah, there are certain initiatives they have around S mode and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, by the way, S mode is pretty good for like grandmother IT support mode, just quietly.
That is actually true and fair.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah,
true.
I mean, it basically turns a Windows machine into a Chromebook, which is also why you would tell your grandmother to get a Chromebook, right?
And actually, presuming S mode does still exist, it should be a little better under Windows 11 because the biggest pain point for a lot of people with S mode was you could only install stuff from the Windows Store, which was an absolute trash fire. It was
Mm.
terrible.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that Microsoft has committed to, haven't yet done it, so again, wait 6 months, is to make the Windows Store a lot better, a lot more usable, and actually throw interesting apps in there and things like that.
Yeah.
So maybe S mode might be less painful this
So
time around.
So yeah, there's a couple of things there. We'll go back to the other one, which is
Hmm.
tablet mode. That was the one where you pressed it and everything got big. You really noticed it in Windows 8. That was
Yeah.
where you went into
Metro
touch.
or modern at
Yeah,
various
yeah,
points, yes.
yeah. So basically, they got one interface for that. Now, the thing with with Microsoft Store is that it's currently a bin fire. It really, really is. You go there and look for anything, and people have just packaged up someone else's app, and you know they're not getting mega downloads. But if you're a person that's like, oh, I'll do the right thing, I'll install from the store that comes with the OS. Oh, there's all sorts of junk in there. Who knows, really what's going on? Like, you go in there and you look for a common app, and it's not from the publisher's, not common app. It's some Charlie over the seas
So it's
somewhere.
got an Android-y feel to it.
Oh, Android before Google cleaned it up,
Early Android,
yeah, proto Android.
Wild West Android.
Well, and speaking of Android, they want to get Android apps running on Windows 11, which
Well,
is
I wanted to get onto this because
yeah,
it's
and
the missing feature.
yeah, and that's and it's not there. So wait 12 wait 12 months maybe for that one. But that's what will close the gap between, as you were saying before, Adam, between ARM and the x86, because like I said, I've got an ARM device. Everything still doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you're just not going to be able. Windows doesn't really do universal binaries like Apple does. So the way to close that gap is to go, oh well, you can't run that popular Windows app you want to do because they don't do an ARM version, and when we try and run it through our compatibility layers, it still craps up. Hey, what about the Android version? We know that's going to work. So I think that's the
Okay.
play. I think that's the
Yeah.
play they're aiming for there.
Still a
The
bit of
other
a kludgy
thing,
solution compared to Apple's way of just getting it to work with Rosetta or whatever under the bonnet, so everything just works.
Yeah, well, the problem, of course, is that Microsoft's always had, which is why it's popular, is that it works with any hardware configuration you throw at it. The reason why Rosetta works for Apple is because they know exactly what hardware configurations they can aim up at. Whereas Microsoft, golly, if you can hack together a chip and some storage and some memory, you can throw Windows on there. It'll run. It'll run.
I was going to say, to be fair to the ARM version of Windows, the hardware they've put out for Windows laptops has improved year on year. I mean, those early ones, the Surface RT was absolutely awful.
Yeah,
Whereas some of the later stuff that we've seen out of the likes of Samsung and even Microsoft themselves, the Surface Pro X is their ARM
yeah.
version of that, and they've just announced a refresh of that as well with the Wi-Fi model. We talked about it on the show a couple of weeks ago. So that has sort of improved. But I wanted to get back onto this Android thing because I keep vacillating between that's genius for exactly the reasons you outlined, the kind of, hey, I can add more apps. And then does anyone actually want that? Even looking at macOS, where you've been able to run iOS apps on macOS for some time now, but it's not really a feature anyone gets excited about. I've not hit a lot of reporting or a lot of suggestion of this has changed the way people use computers.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It feels more like a store of last resort. I think you're still going to try to go to the places where you get Windows software now, i.e., the publishers' websites and stuff. You'll probably install it, it'll break because you're running an ARM chip, and then you turn around and go, oh, okay, you make an Android app. I guess I'll have to use that because, as the Apple experience has shown, even when you have iOS apps on macOS, like the apps just aren't as full featured, and you can tell it doesn't quite fit. So if you run it's funny, if you run a mobile app on a desktop, it seems to run like a phone, not like a desktop.
It's curious that.
Weird.
And I
Yeah.
guess Android's actually got a bigger problem here as well because you've been able to do this kind of thing before. What is it? It's a program called BlueStacks off the top of my head, which can do Android emulation on a Windows platform. You've been able to do that for a while, but at least for Mac OS, at least for Apple, they could say, well, we've got the iPad, we've got developers who are working on like sort of 16.9 or 16.10-ish apps. Whereas for Android, tablets are such a side thought. So many developers do not make their apps particularly tablet friendly, which means they're not going to be Windows friendly either.
No, if you invest in one of those big Samsung curved displays and then put an Android app on it, oh boy.
You
I
can
hope
put
you
20 apps across it.
I hope you like white space.
Yeah.
It's just yes. I hope someone does a screenshot of that the day that they launch it. I don't have one of those monitors, but if you do, send it in. I'm sure the lads would love to see it.
Absolutely. Please send it our way.
Because, like put Instagram on it or something, where everything's just in this narrow column in the middle.
What a fabulous, fabulous idea. So I suppose, to sum up, Chris, I suppose I should ask, have you installed Windows 11 on a whole bunch of machines and should people do it?
I've only done it on the ARM device I was previously talking about, and that was in an effort to try and rescue it. So I have, I've spent a handful of hours, actually using it in anger. I mean, it's fine. Like, it's fine. It's just 10 with a new coat of paint. That's all. Um, but there's I've got, my main machine, 11's going to probably kick up a stink with it. It doesn't have a TPM. I mean, it's a Skylake. Those are ancient chips. I mean, what am I talking? 4 years old, maybe? Like, yeah. So, no, I haven't. I'll just pick it up when a new device lands. Honestly, there's no reason to run out today and think to yourself, I must have 11.
Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Chris for joining us for this week's show.
Always a pleasure.
And Chris, you've been on the show before. You know what you're about to face. The Vertical Hold 3 Questions of Doom. However, as you have already answered the 3 Questions of Doom, or the topical question, I'm going to have to change it up for you, just for this week. So, where can people find your work online? Where can they find you on social media online? And keeping things topical for the week, the big contentious question, what's the best Australian bird?
Oh,
Okay, so the best Australian bird is the pink cockatoo. Now, you may know it by its colonial name, which is the Major Mitchell cockatoo. It's the one that just has the fiery crest and it's pink. It's a cool bird. Close second is the bin chicken because we devastated its habitat and it went, screw you, I'm coming into your cities and I'm going to pick at your bins. So, there's a lot of, it's a much maligned bird, the bin chicken. Doesn't get enough respect as a survivor. And if you want to find me, I'm at ZDNet, and you can find me on the socials if you type my name into a search engine. There is only one or a couple of me. You'll find which one is the shit poster pretty quickly.
And we should also give thanks to Alice for her time earlier in the show. Although I feel compelled to point out, Chris, that the cassowary is very disappointed in you.
That's fair point, actually. Have you seen one in the flesh?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So
They're an amazing death bird.
Yeah. Who dropped the angry dinosaur? Oh my god.
Only in Australia. And as always, you can catch us online at Vertical Hold AU on Twitter, at verticalhold.com.au on the web, or via the Vertical Hold Facebook page if it's up while you're listening to this.
and as always, thanks everyone for listening. Direct your bin chicken complaints to Chris, not to us. Thanks for dropping by. Hang in there. We know it's tough at the moment. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. Leave us a review on your podcasting platform of choice and help us spread the good word.